Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Texas Podcast. I am your host, Gabe, and today we'll be talking about the Battle of Corpus Christi. The Battle of Corpus Christi was fought between August 12th and August 18th, 1862 during the American Civil War. The United States Navy forces blockading Texas fought a small land and sea engagement with Confederate forces in and around Corpus Christi Bay and bombarded Corpus Christi. Union forces defeated Confederate States Navy's ships operating in the area, but were repulsed when they landed on the coast. Texas had been a main source of supplies for Confederate forces during the American Civil War. Union naval operations to blockade the Texas coast began. Despite being in a Confederate state, Corpus Christi was home to both Confederate patriots and Union sympathizers. 5 Union and 4 Confederate ships were involved in the battle. The United States Navy vessels, including the sloop USS Belle Italia, the steamer converted to a gunboat USS Sachem, the bark USS Arthur, the schooner USS Reindeer, and an armed yacht named the USS Corpus. Confederate naval forces included at least 2 armed vessels, a sloop named the CSS Breaker, a schooner named CSS Elma, another sloop named the CSS Hannah, and a merchant steamer, the AB or AB. The USS Sachem was originally commanded by Captain H.W. Morris, the former U.S. Navy commander of New Orleans, and was armed with one 20-pound Parrott rifle and 4 32-pounder cannons. The size of her crew was about 50. She had also participated in several other historic naval engagements such as Hampton Roads and the Battle of Forts Jackson and St. Phillips. Captain Morris is not believed to have fought in this battle. Lieutenant Amos Johnson commanded Sachem. Lieutenant John W. Kittredge was in charge of Arthur, which held over 80 men and was armed with 6 32-pounder smoothbore guns. Kittredge commanded the crew of the flotilla, and Arthur was a flagship of the force. Corpus commanded one 30-pound rifled gun and one 24-pounder howitzer. She had a crew of 28 men and was commanded by acting master A.T. Spear. Belle Italia's armament and crew are not known. Reindeer mustered 6 24-pound howitzers. Little is known of the Confederate ship. The size of Corpus Christi's garrison included a few militia companies with 2 6-pounder cannons. They were later reinforced by militia, some mounted and another 12-pounder and one 18-pounder gun. A total of 700 Confederates were involved in the battle. The militia garrison was commanded by Colonel Charles G. Lovenskool, but he handed his command over to Major Alfred M. Hobby when he arrived with reinforcements. The garrison was based on the Citadel and Fort Kinney. At noon on August 12th, just northwest of Corpus Christi, Belle Italia, Sachem, Reindeer, and Corpus were sailing from Aransas Bay through a canal into Corpus Christi Bay when they sighted the CSS Breaker. The Union Navy vessels then gave chase to the sloop, which was filled with sailors and several Confederate States Army soldiers who were returning from a reconnaissance mission. After a long pursuit, the Union ships closed in on the Confederates and opened fire. The Confederate commander chose to ground his sloop and then scuttle it by fire to prevent her capture. A boarding party from Arthur went to take the vessel and prevent the burning. By the time they arrived, the Confederates had already lowered lifeboats and were escaping overland. The Union sailors boarded the breaker and put out the fire. Having taken and refloated the prize ship and thus weakened the defenses of Corpus Christi, Union commanders felt it was now time to attack the Confederates defending the town. Knowing that breaker was gone, Confederates in the bay scuttled CSS Elma and the sloop CSS Hannah. After taking the breaker, the Union vessels sailed southwest the short distance to Corpus Christi and established a blockade. Sachem and Corpus were designated to the first and to bombard the Confederate fort. Lieutenant Kittredge transferred his flag to Corpus from Arthur, which he sent north to procure supplies such as ammunition and food. Belle Italia and Reindeer sat out of range as reserves, and the captured breaker was used as a hospital ship. The following morning, on August 13th, Lieutenant Kittredge and a boarding party were ordered ashore to demand a Confederate surrender of the port town of the Nueces River. He was also ordered to allow a 48-hour truce for the evacuation of women and children should the rebels decide to make a stand. As expected, the rebels refused to surrender. The Union continued to blockade for the next 48 hours, and on the 16th, when the truce ended, Kittredge for unknown reasons, failed to begin his attack, so the Confederates used the time to continue strengthening their fort. When the rebels evacuated the town of civilians and finished working on the fort, they attacked the Union vessels at dawn on August 17th. Lieutenant Kittredge responded with counter-battery fire and silenced the guns temporarily. Whenever the Union ship ceasing fire, the Confederates would man the battery again and continue fighting. This process of repeatedly silencing the fort lasted all day and night until Kittredge withdrew his ships due to darkness. Sachem and Corypheus were both damaged slightly. Bella Italia is known to have been hit as well. The shot wounded a petty officer on deck. Near midnight on the 17th, Bella Italia sent ashore a party of 30 sailors and a 12-pounder howitzer to attack the fort. 70 other sailors were available for landing, but only Bella Italia's 32 men were sent ashore. This same night, rebel forces scuttled AB in the shallow channel that leads to the Nueces Bay. Kittredge and Corypheus repeatedly tried to tow the ship out of the channel before it burned completely. This was undertaken either to take a ship as a prize or to prevent the ship from sinking and blocking the narrow channel. The Union ships stayed as far away as possible, which helped prevent casualties on both sides. The distance of the ships from the fort meant both forces had to fight at a maximum range, thus decreasing the effectiveness of their shots. The Confederate gunners were also untrained. A shortage of gunpowder left them without the ability to practice before the engagement. The next morning, the landing force advanced until within cannon and musket range of the fort. Fighting again commenced, and soon the ships resumed bombarding the rebel guns. At this time, Major Hobby and 25 infantrymen advanced in order to defend the battery. Cavalry under Lieutenant James A. Ware were held in reserve but eventually joined in the attack. Skirmishing continued for a time. The Union sailors held out due to their ships, which supported them with artillery fire. After a prolonged skirmish, the Union forces on the land began to run low on ammunition, so they started an organized retreat back to the Bella Italia with help from the blockade. Fort Kinney was not taken, but it was silenced by Union fire at this time. The Confederates defeated the shore party and withdrew to the town. Crewmen of the United States Navy ships saw this movement, so Kittredge ordered the bombardment of the coastal buildings to where the rebels had withdrawn. Most of the damaged buildings were houses and stores. After all the ammunition aboard the warships had been expended, the battle was over and Kittredge ordered his ships north into Aransas Bay. During the bombardment, a Unionist living in Corpus Christi named John Dix grabbed his American flag and headed for the roof of his Water Street home. Dix intended to wave the flag at the United States ship as a sign of surrender, but before he could get to his roof, his daughter-in-law stopped him. She was married to Dix's son, who was fighting for the Confederacy. The daughter carried a shotgun and pointed it at her father-in-law until the flag was put away. When the shelling was over, the Confederates in town were very angry and many of the Unionists were happy. Anger over the attack led to the looting of several houses belonging to Union supporters. Casualties of the engagement are mostly unknown. 2 Union sailors were wounded, one aboard the Bella Italia. At least 1 Confederate was killed in action. Major Hobby was slightly wounded. Once in Aransas Bay, the ships reunited with Arthur, which had left the blockade earlier. The battle ended as a tactical victory for the United States. They overcame Confederate naval activity in the area and silenced the enemy fort protecting Corpus Christi in the bay. Confederate forces did defeat the Union shore party. They also continued to hold the town and silenced the fort after the battle. That is all for the Battle of Corpus Christi. I hope you all enjoyed, and I'll see you all in the next one.